So, you've clicked on a video critical of Doctor Who. I know what you're thinking right now. Oh god, is this guy gonna be bellyaching about wokeness and diversity? The answer to that is no, that is not what I align with. That and I value analysis far too highly to just marinate it in buzzwords that could mean anything. So relax, that's not me. But I do feel that because of those types of quote-unquote commentary, people who don't go into cardiac arrest because they saw something other than a white man made an appearance on screen can be a bit more defensive, handling current Doctor Who episodes with kid gloves because they mean well. But let me tell you, there is nothing on this planet with less critical thinking skills than a Doctor Who fan the day of a new episode's launch. This latest episode was everything you'd ever wanted until next Saturday, when you're hoping the next episode will amend the shortcomings of the last. Heck, if we went by on-the-day reactions, you'd think Doctor Who had never had a bad episode, which it definitely has. And it feels like the only scrutiny this show's ever being put under is by Clans members. There are, of course, exceptions. I'm not saying there are no good Doctor Who critics. And far be it of me to criticize anyone for their critical thinking skills. Like what you like. If you think this stuff's genuinely good, why not defend it? But this video here has been brewing for a while. We need to have an honest conversation about the politics in the current Russell T Davies-led run of Doctor Who, because they're not very helpful. And if you did click on this video hoping for a breakdown of how woke this newest episode is, well, come, join the conversation. I'm going to give you something to think about. Now, don't let me gaslight you. Doctor Who is inherently political. Fundamentally speaking, this show is political. You've got the Doctor's origins as this space traveler hippie guy on the run from the authoritarian regime that is the Time Lords, and how he himself is an idealist at heart. He's not supposed to interfere with time and space, but he does because he genuinely believes he can make it better. Make it kinder. Hellbent is a peak episode, by the way. I take back everything I said about that. And then you've got the origins of the different villains. You've got the Daleks, which are a clear Nazi allegory. Fueled by hatred, permanently sealed inside of tanks, turned into monsters by neutronic fallout. The Cybermen, and how technological augmentation can cause us to lose touch with what makes us human. It was well ahead of its time. Doctor Who is just a show that is drenched in allegory. The show is absolutely at its best when it makes you stop and think and reflect, and that should ultimately be the purpose of political subtext, or heck, it doesn't even have to be subtext in some cases, just political coding in drama full stop should be designed to make you stop, think, reconsider, and reflect. My complaints are not that it's too one-sided or that it has an agenda. Look at Genesis of the Daleks. It still frames the Daleks, our Nazi stand-ins, as the bad guys. And I mean, obviously, but it still has an angle. It's not purely a let the audience decide thing. If you watched that story and decided the Daleks are the good guys, then you need to have a word with yourself. Current Doctor Who, though, and I'm referring to kind of the post-Jodie Whittaker era here, handles its political matters a bit differently, generally speaking. Now, this is going to sound contradictory, but current Doctor Who reflects the way political conversations are had today in that rather than trying to provoke thought, it's a lot more interested in bunkering down with a side and hurling as many passive-aggressive insults at the other side as it can. Season 2, Episode 1, The Robot Revolution, is a textbook example of this. You've got a world where robots have taken over and your main villain is called the AI Generator. So what we can dissect from this is that AI is the bad guy. But it has nothing more to say about AI on that matter. They made the conscious decision to name the big bad the AI Generator because generative AI is a real-world issue, but we don't see it generate anything or trying to replicate any form of humanity. We don't really see it being exploited by corporations. It's just a villain named after a buzzword. And then there's who the villain is inside. Al, the fella who controls the AI Generator. Al is an incel. So, what commentary does the episode make on incel culture? Nothing. He's an object of ridicule, gleefully sent to a grueling death by the Doctor. If you've ever dealt with an incel before, this may be a brief bit of catharsis, but it adds nothing of value to the conversation. This is effectively political junk food. You could make Al not an incel, and very little would actually change in this storyline. So effectively, rather than offering any actual real-world commentary, Doctor Who is instead just telling a story about a robot uprising, and not a very good one at that, it's no Blade Runner, let's be real, and flicking through the Rolodex of real-world issues that the story can be blamed onto. This week it's incels. Last Christmas, it was the pandemic. And there's another great example of this. Joy to the World, a story that sees the Doctor running around a time hotel, but a mysterious briefcase keeps attaching itself to people and it will kill them or something. When it's attached to Joy, the Doctor goes on a spiel about the COVID-19 pandemic and how the British government partied while enforcing lockdowns, which, yes, is fucked up. But what have we added to that conversation? What thoughts have we provoked here? Again, flick the Rolodex. How do we get the briefcase off of Joy? Let's see, we could do 9/11, maybe the Iraq War, perhaps the Holocaust. Oh, look at that, COVID, perfect. That'll do. It's effectively just assimilating real-world issues for the sake of a MacGuffin that's actually monstrously insensitive considering how we're taking events where real people suffered and making them into the catalyst for a plot about a deadly briefcase. Heck, we've got 73 Yards, an episode where the main villain is an evil, corrupt politician whose main agenda is that he wants to nuke the world, and again, there's no commentary, no nuance, he's just a bad dude. The giggle briefly takes a pot shot at anti-maskers with Trinity Wells declaring herself anti-Zedex, and then there's all the crazy people that all believe they're right. You got the Toymaker's little rant about how people shout and type and cancel, but these aren't ongoing themes throughout the episode to provoke thought, they're effectively Easter eggs. Hey, remember that one shitty real-world thing that we're dealing with? Sucks, doesn't it? Well done. Everyone who agreed with this still already agrees, and everyone who didn't still disagrees because you didn't add any meaningful, thought-provoking, insightful commentary to the conversation. If Doctor Who wanted to do an episode about incels, we could have had a story where some subculture on an alien world is rejecting and abusing its other genders. We could reveal that there are inherent problems with the educational system, the media on that world. We could look into what causes that. I criticized the Star Beast because the script didn't demonstrate an understanding of the existence of trans people, with Rose Noble's gender identity being chalked up to the meta-crisis. I viewed this as an instance where Russell T Davies didn't really demonstrate an understanding of the subject he was dealing with. And with the robot revolution, we've got an incel character. Incels who usually stem from a place of loneliness and isolation, and he's introduced as Belinda Chandra's boyfriend. And maybe that's just a thing the other characters say, but Belinda never denies it. What's the first thing to know about incels, guys? They don't have girlfriends. They have victims. And if Belinda was meant to be more of a victim, maybe you'd want to take that story a bit more seriously. Explore how we can help. Maybe a real-world incel out there, and Lord knows there are plenty of them who watch Doctor Who, might see that episode and reflect on how ridiculous he is. He might actually learn something. You don't make a persuasive argument by just taking your target and turning it into an object of ridicule. You could have had an episode that takes place in a world ravaged by a great pandemic, trying to get life back to normal, but we've got a central protagonist character who cannot shake off the callousness they've witnessed from the people that didn't consider them or their loved ones. The pandemic was this huge thing that affected us all in different ways, and we haven't had conversations about that we really do need to have. And Doctor Who is doing nothing to improve that other than getting one over on the Tories, in which case, well done, you pointed out the obvious, but you also assimilated a real-world tragedy for the sake of getting a fucking briefcase off of Joy's wrist in a yoinky-sploinky Christmas romp. Now, this isn't to say that this current iteration of the show always gets it wrong, or that writers Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat are incapable of getting the political subtext right. In fact, between shows like Douglas is cancelled, It's a Sin, Years and Years, these guys can. They are probably some of the best equipped writers to handle this kind of thing. I have no idea what's going on. We've got Boom, with its thoughtful meditation on the futility of faith as a resolution. Heck, this might not even be deliberate, but I'd say that The Wild Blue Yonder has more meaningful things to say about AI replication than the robot revolution ever attempted. We've got Dot and Bubble with its frightening future world where everyone just indulges themselves in their bubbles, never listening to any outsider perspectives, and that ultimately sends them to their doom because they're never challenged on their racist views. Wait a minute, hang the fuck on. This show is literally staying in its own bubble, completely rejecting audiences that it could otherwise educate and inform. It's quite apparent that Russell T Davies' mentality towards people like transphobes, incels, etc. is that they should all fuck off. And I do get the frustration. I'm also very tired of these people. But in just straight up dehumanizing them and telling them to just piss off, you're missing out on the opportunity to educate them. Every belief, shitty or not, comes from somewhere. Maybe they reject the message, maybe they don't. But Doctor Who isn't even trying anymore. It's not educating anyone. It's not giving anyone any reasons to reflect. It is purely a passive watch with a little dopamine rush for people who already agree, and that is worthless. There are other great examples of political Doctor Who stories outside of this era, such as the Zygon two-parter in Season 9, which explored the refugee crisis, and of course the godfather of all political Doctor Who stories, Torchwood Children of Earth, which I highly recommend, as Earth is effectively locked into a drug deal with an alien called the 456, and the drugs are our children. And we see the governments of the world gather round to decide which children will be used as drugs for the 456 and which won't. How they enforce that, it is tremendously dark. It's got its angle, it's got its agenda, it's got its own moral backbone, but there's actually something to feast on here as far as the political allegory goes. Now, I get that Torchwood was more for adults while Doctor Who is more for kids, but again, Doctor Who has done political allegory before. It's built on it. What we have with episodes like The Robot Revolution and Joy to the World and The Giggle are not political stories. They're really not. They are just episodes that occasionally grandstand and occasionally lash out. Political commentary should be thought-provoking, but this recent run has just been so passive-aggressive, and that's not helping anyone. The video is over. Leave.